Dawn came too quickly. Day woke to the sound of movement as other cadets packed their equipment. The second day of the crucible had arrived. The sky looked wrong. Dark clouds rolled in from the east, thick and heavy. The air felt different, charged with something Day could not name. The local animals had disappeared. Even the insects were quiet. A storm was coming. The cadets gathered near Checkpoint Alpha for the day's briefing. A hologram projected from the checkpoint marker showing Instructor Krell Noth's massive face. Day 2 objective: cross the wetlands. Reach Checkpoint Beta, 20 kilometers northwest. Weather advisory: precipitation likely. Use your environmental shields. The hologram vanished. The cadets immediately began checking their equipment. Energy shields hummed to life, creating protective bubbles around each cadet. Some shields were large enough to cover 2 or 3 people. Others were personal, wrapping tight around the user. Day had no shield. He looked at the approaching clouds and thought about his options. The cadets moved out in groups. The Quilnari formed a tight formation, their combined shields creating a large protective dome. The Vextar moved in pairs, their crystal bodies glowing brighter than usual. The Chitter scurried ahead, confident in their natural armor. Day walked alone, watching the clouds grow darker. The first drops fell 30 minutes later. They hit the ground with a hissing sound. Where they landed, the purple grass dissolved, turning brown and smoking. The rocks bubbled. The trees steamed acid rain, Taro 7's infamous acid rain. The alien cadets activated their shields fully. The drops hit the energy barriers and slid off harmlessly, leaving trails of smoke in the air. The cadets continued forward, protected by their technology. Day had no such protection. The first drop hit his arm. It burned like fire. He wiped it away quickly, but his skin was already red and angry. Another drop hit his shoulder, then his leg. He needed shelter fast. Day ran toward a cluster of trees. Not just any trees. He had noticed these earlier in the morning. They were different from the others. Their leaves were wider, thicker, with a waxy coating that made water bead up and roll off. He reached the largest tree and pressed against the trunk. The canopy above provided some protection, but not enough. Drops still found their way through, burning where they landed. Day studied the leaves more carefully. They grew at an angle, each one slightly overlapping the next. The waxy surface made the acid slide off instead of soaking in. Channels in the leaf structure directed water away from the center of the tree. It was natural engineering, perfected over thousands of years of evolution. If the tree could do it, so could he. Day began cutting leaves from the lower branches. He chose the largest, healthiest ones. Using his knife, he carved small holes near the stem of each leaf. Then he used cord from his makeshift pack to tie them together, overlapping them the same way they grew on the tree. He worked quickly, ignoring the burns on his hands and face. The rain grew heavier. His clothes smoked where drops hit. After 20 minutes, he had created a crude shelter. It looked like a large umbrella made from leaves held together with cord and supported by a frame of flexible branches. It was ugly, but it worked. The acid rain hit the waxy leaves and rolled off harmlessly. Day continued forward, carrying his mobile shelter above his head. He looked ridiculous, he knew it. But he was dry and unburned, which was more than could be said for pride. He walked for another hour, following the route toward Checkpoint Beta. The rain fell harder, turning the landscape into a steaming, smoking nightmare. Even with their shields, the alien cadets moved slowly, worried about equipment failure. Then Day heard the scream. It was high-pitched and filled with pain. It came from somewhere to his right off the main path. Day stopped and listened. The scream came again, weaker this time. He should keep walking. He was already behind schedule. Helping someone would cost him time he could not afford to lose. The logical choice was to continue forward. Day turned right and ran toward the sound. He found her in a small valley between 2 hills. Tiksha, one of the Chitter cadets. She lay on the ground, her insect-like body curled into a ball. Smoke rose from her carapace. Her shield generator lay nearby, cracked and sparking. "Help," she clicked weakly. "Please." Day did not hesitate. He covered her with his leaf shelter, protecting her from the falling rain. But she was already badly burned. The acid had eaten through her natural armor in several places, exposing the soft tissue underneath. "Where is your squad?" Day asked. Ahead, they did not notice. "Moved too fast." Her antennae drooped. "Why do you help?" "You're kind. You do not like us." I do not know where you got that idea, Day said, looking around for more materials. I do not like some individuals, but that is different from hating a whole species. He spotted a cave entrance 20 meters away. The opening was small but big enough for both of them. He needed to move her there, but she could not walk. Day cut 2 strong branches and lashed them together with his cord, creating a simple stretcher. He used his jacket as a carrier, tying it between the poles. Gently, he lifted Tikcha onto the stretcher. She was heavier than she looked. Each step toward the cave made his muscles scream. The rain continued falling. His leaf shelter protected them both, but barely. Acid splashed onto his legs and back. New burns added to the old ones. He reached the cave and pulled the stretcher inside. The cave was dry and safe, protected from the rain. Day collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. You are injured, Tikcha clicked. Because of me. I am fine, Dee lied. His burns throbbed with pain. He forced himself to move. First, he needed to treat Tikcha's wounds, but he had no medical supplies. No nanobots, no healing gel. Just a knife and whatever nature provided. Day ventured back out under his shelter, searching the area near the cave. He found what he was looking for, a type of moss growing on the shaded side of rocks. It was bright green and felt cool to the touch. He had noticed earlier that the local animals rubbed against it when injured. If it helped them, maybe it would help Tikcha. He gathered large handfuls of the moss and brought it back to the cave. Carefully, he applied it to her burns. Tikcha shivered at first, then relaxed. It feels better, she clicked, surprise in her voice. Good, Day said. He gathered dry wood from deeper in the cave and started a fire using the friction method. The warmth helped. Tikcha's breathing became more regular. Night fell. The rain continued, a constant hiss against the stone outside. Day kept the fire burning and checked Tikcha's wounds every hour. The moss seemed to be working. The exposed tissue looked less angry, less burned. Why did you save me? Tikcha asked during one of these checks. You lost time. You might fail the course because of this. Day added wood to the fire. My grandfather taught me something. He said that being strong is not about being the strongest person. It is about standing up when others cannot. It is about helping even when it costs you something. That is foolish, Tikcha clicked. That is how you lose. Maybe, Day admitted. But it is also how you stay human. He did not sleep that night. He kept watch over Tikcha, maintained the fire, and listened to the rain destroy the world outside. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Tikcha's squad came searching for her, following emergency protocols for missing cadets. They found her alive, stable, covered in green moss and sleeping peacefully. They found Day gone. A trail of footprints led away from the cave, heading northwest toward checkpoint Beta. In the orbital station, Hye-Jin wiped her eyes. She had watched the entire thing. Beside her, Krelnoth was silent, his 6 eyes fixed on the monitor showing Day's position. He sacrificed his lead, the Varathian finally said, for someone who was not even his species. That is what humans do, Hye-Jin replied quietly. That is who we are. Krelnoth said nothing more, but something had changed in his expression. The drop pod screamed through the atmosphere of Taros 7. Dihan gripped the safety harness as the pod shook violently. Through the small window, he watched the purple sky turn darker as they descended through clouds. Around him, 22 other pods fell like metal rain. Each carried a cadet. Each cadet had their full survival pack with 47 items. Day had a knife. The pod hit ground hard. The door exploded outward with a bang and a burst of steam. Day released his harness and stepped onto the surface of Taros 7. The first thing he noticed was the smell. It reminded him of the ocean, but sharper, almost bitter. The second thing was the grass. It was not really grass, but tall purple plants with edges that looked razor-sharp. They covered the landscape in every direction. The third thing he noticed was the heat. It pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. Other cadets emerged from their pods across the landing zone. Immediately, they activated their equipment. Force fields shimmered around them like soap bubbles. Small flying drones launched from their packs and buzzed into the air. Exosuits hummed to life, adjusting body temperature. The Quilnari cadets formed a group, their forearms pulling out maps and scanners. The Vextar, including Rel, created a protective circle, their bodies glowing with stored energy. The chitter moved in pairs, their antennae twitching as they communicated. Day stood alone with his knife and his makeshift bag. Several cadets looked at him. Some pointed. He heard Rel's voice carry across the clearing. Look at the human. No equipment. He will not last until nightfall. Other cadets laughed. Day ignored them. High above the planet, in the orbital observation station, Instructor Hai-Jin watched through monitors. She was human like Day, one of the few who had earned the rank of Coalition Ranger. She saw Day standing alone and felt her chest tighten with worry. "He has no equipment," she said to Instructor Krelnoth, who stood beside her. "His pack was sabotaged. This is not fair." "The Crucible is never fair," Krelnoth replied, his 6 eyes focused on the screens. "It is real. Real survival situations are not fair. We will see what humans are truly capable of." Hai-Jin wanted to argue more, but Krelnoth's tone said the conversation was over. On the surface, the cadets began moving. The first checkpoint was 15 kilometers away through the razorgrass forest. They had to reach it before nightfall. The alien cadets moved in formation, following their scanners and drones. They walked carefully, using energy cutters to clear paths through the dangerous plants. Day walked into the forest alone. He moved differently than the others. Instead of fighting the environment, he studied it. He watched which direction the wind blew. He noticed which areas the small animals avoided. He saw patterns in how the plants grew. His grandfather taught him to read the land. "Nature always tells you what you need to know," the old man had said. "You just have to listen." Day listened. He noticed that some of the razor grass had brown tips while others stayed purple. He touched the brown-tipped grass carefully. It was dried out, less sharp. He could push through these areas with minimal cuts. He noticed tracks in the dirt. Something heavy had walked here recently, crushing the plants. Following these natural paths was easier than cutting new ones. He noticed the sun's position and how shadows fell. He did not need a scanner to know which direction was northeast. After 2 hours of walking, Day found water. A small stream ran through a rocky area. The other cadets had water purifiers. Day had observation skills. He watched the local animals. 6-legged creatures that looked like a mix between rabbits and lizards drank from the stream. They did not get sick. They did not die. The water was safe. Day drank deeply, then filled a container he made from folded leaves sealed with tree sap. His grandfather had shown him this technique when he was 8 years old. As the day grew hotter, Day removed his jacket. He wrapped it around his head to protect from the sun, keeping his arms free to move. The alien cadets relied on their thermal regulators. Day relied on common sense. By midday, he started finding food. The rabbit-lizard creatures lived in burrows. Day made a simple snare from cord and placed it near a burrow entrance. 30 minutes later, he had fresh meat. He did not stop to cook it yet. Time was important. He wrapped the meat in leaves and kept moving. The terrain changed as he walked. The razor grass thinned out, replaced by trees with twisted trunks and silver leaves. Day tested one of the trees by cutting it with his knife. The wood was hard, perfect for making tools. He cut a long, straight branch. While walking, he used his knife to sharpen one end into a point. Now he had a spear. If the rabbit lizards existed, bigger predators probably did too. 4 hours before sunset, Day reached a clearing. In the center stood a metal marker. Checkpoint Alpha. He was the first to arrive. He did not celebrate. Instead, he used the remaining daylight to prepare for night. First, shelter. He found a spot where 2 large rocks leaned against each other, creating a natural wall. He gathered the straightest branches he could find and built a frame against the rocks. Then he collected broad leaves and layered them on the frame, each row overlapping the one below. His grandfather called this technique shingling. It kept out rain and wind. Second, fire. The alien cadets would use their heating units. Day needed real fire. He gathered dry grass and dead leaves for tinder. He found harder wood for fuel. Then he used his knife to scrape shavings from a dry stick, creating a small pile of material that would catch flame easily. Starting fire by friction was hard work. Day cut a flat piece of wood and made a small depression in it. He cut another piece into a spindle. He placed the spindle in the depression and spun it rapidly between his palms, pressing down hard. His hands hurt. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he kept going. Smoke appeared, then a tiny orange glow. Day transferred the ember carefully to his tinder bundle and blew gently. Flames erupted. Third, food. He built up his fire and found a flat stone to place in the coals. While it heated, he prepared the rabbit lizard, cleaning it with his knife. When the stone was hot enough, he cooked the meat. The smell was strange, but not bad. He ate slowly, saving half for morning. As the twin suns set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, other cadets began arriving at Checkpoint Alpha. They looked exhausted. Their equipment had gotten them here, but they looked worried about the night ahead. They saw Day sitting by his fire, shelter built, food eaten, looking comfortable. Rel arrived with a group of Vextar. He stopped and stared at the human. His crystal body pulsed with confusion, shifting from blue to purple to green. "How did you—" Rel started, then stopped. Day looked up from his fire.
"How did I what?"
"You arrived first. You have no equipment, how?" Day fed another stick to his fire. "I walked. I paid attention. I used what was here. But the technology is great," Day said. "But sometimes knowing how things work is better than having things that work for you." The Vextar cadets moved away to set up their equipment shelters. Day watched them struggle with controls and settings, trying to make their technology adapt to the environment. He pulled his jacket tighter and added more wood to his fire. The night would be cold, but he was ready. Above, in the observation station, Hyejin smiled. Krelnoth said nothing, but one of his 6 eyes remained fixed on the monitor showing Daehan. The crucible had only just begun. The briefing hall was huge and cold. Daehan stood near the back wall, trying to make himself smaller. It was not working. He was the only human in a room full of aliens, and everyone knew it. The other cadets filled the space with strange colors and stranger shapes. The Vextar looked like walking crystals, their bodies catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. The Quilnari were tall with 4 arms each, moving them in patterns that made Day dizzy to watch. The chitter made clicking sounds as they talked, their insect-like bodies covered in shiny armor. Day counted 17 different species, 17 kinds of aliens and 1 human. He pulled his uniform straight and kept his face calm. His grandmother always said that showing fear was worse than feeling it. Right now he felt plenty of it, but nobody needed to know that. The front of the hall exploded with light. A massive figure stepped onto the platform. Instructor Supreme Krelnoth was twice as tall as Day and 3 times as wide. His species, the Varathians, were known across the galaxy as warriors. 6 red eyes studied the cadets like a predator choosing prey. "Cadets," his voice boomed through the hall. "You are here because your governments believe you are special. They believe you can survive the Crucible course." The room went quiet. Even the chitter stopped their clicking. "The Crucible is simple," Krelnoth continued. 50 hours on Taros 7, survive, reach the checkpoints. Complete the summit. Only 30% of cadets pass this course. Some die, some quit, some break. His 6 eyes swept across the room and stopped on Day. They stayed there for 3 long seconds. "Each of you will receive a standard survival pack. It contains 47 items. Everything you need to survive. Shelter, food makers, medical tools, weapons, communication devices. The Coalition has spent decades perfecting this equipment." A hologram appeared above the platform, showing the pack and all its contents. Day studied each item. Thermal regulators to control body temperature, nutrient synthesizers to make food from almost anything, emergency beacons to call for help, plasma cutters that could slice through metal, portable shelters that set up in seconds, water purifiers, medical nanobots that could heal wounds while you slept. It was impressive. It was also completely alien to him. "Tomorrow at dawn, you deploy to Taros 7, Krelnoth said. "You have tonight to prepare. Study your equipment. Learn the course maps. Pray to whatever gods you believe in." The briefing ended. Cadets rushed forward to collect their survival packs. Day waited until the crowd thinned, then approached the equipment station. The supply officer, a small gray alien with too many fingers, handed him a pack without looking up. "Sign here. Damage or loss results in failure." Day signed and carried the pack back to his quarters. His roommate was already there. Rel, the Vextar, stood by the window looking at the stars. His crystal body pulsed with soft blue light. "Hello," Day said in the common galactic language. His accent was terrible, but he tried. Rel turned and his light shifted to orange. Among his species, orange meant disgust. "A human," Rel said, his voice like wind through glass. "They actually let a human into the advanced program." "They did," Day replied quietly. "Your species barely has space travel. You only joined the Coalition 5 years ago. Your technology is primitive. Your bodies are weak." Rel's light flickered brighter. "You should not be here." Day put his pack on his bunk and said nothing. Arguments would not help. He had learned that in his first month at the training center. To most aliens, humans were curiosities at best and jokes at worst. "Stay out of my way during the course," Rel said. "I will not risk my career saving a primitive." "I will do my best," Day replied. Rel left to join other cadets for dinner. Day stayed behind. He opened his survival pack and began studying each item. The thermal regulator was complex, covered in controls he did not recognize. The nutrient synthesizer required programming he had never learned. The plasma cutter had safety protocols that took 10 minutes to disable. Every piece of equipment assumed the user had grown up with advanced technology. Day had grown up in the mountains of Korea, learning to fish and hunt from his grandfather. He knew how to start fires with sticks. He could find north using the sun. He could build shelter from branches and leaves. But this technology might as well have been magic. He spent 3 hours studying the instruction manuals. His head hurt from all the information. Finally, exhausted, he fell asleep on his bunk. He woke 6 hours later to a strange smell. Chemical. Wrong. Day sat up and turned on the light. His survival pack lay open on the floor. Items were scattered everywhere. The thermal regulator was cracked. The synthesizer's screen showed error messages in 3 languages. The medical nanobot container was open and empty, the tiny machines dead on the floor. Someone had destroyed his equipment. Day checked each item carefully. The plasma cutter did not turn on. The emergency beacon was crushed. The portable shelter had holes cut in it. The water purifier's filter was removed and broken. 46 items, 46 pieces of sabotaged equipment. Only one thing remained undamaged. At the bottom of the pack, wrapped in cloth, was the basic combat knife. It was simple metal, sharp on one edge with a handle wrapped in cord. No technology, no complexity, just steel. Day picked up the knife and felt its weight. He thought about reporting the sabotage. He thought about demanding new equipment. He thought about how Instructor Krell looked at him with those 6 eyes, already expecting him to fail. Then he thought about his grandfather, who survived 3 winters in the mountains with nothing but a knife and knowledge. "Guess we are doing this the hard way," Day said to the empty room. He repacked the knife, some torn pieces of fabric, and the rope from the shelter. Everything else he left scattered on the floor. Outside his window, Taro 7 hung in space like a purple jewel. Tomorrow he would drop onto that moon. Tomorrow he would show them what humans could do. Tomorrow he would prove that sometimes the best tool was not technology. Sometimes the best tool was refusing to quit. Day lay back down and closed his eyes. He did not pray to any gods. He did not need to. He had something better than divine help. He had attitude. Day 4 brought a new challenge that made even the most confident cadets nervous. Summit Peak rose 4,000 meters into the thin atmosphere of Taro 7. At the top sat a beacon that each cadet needed to retrieve to complete the crucible. The mountain was steep, covered in ice and battered by winds strong enough to throw a person off the cliff face. Day stood at the base of the mountain and looked up. The summit disappeared into purple clouds. He could not see the top from where he stood. Oxygen supplementation required above 3,000 meters. Instructor Krellnoth's voice announced from the checkpoint marker. Temperature will drop to -40 degrees. Wind speeds exceed 100 kilometers per hour. Recommended equipment: full environmental suit, anti-gravity climbing assist, thermal regulation at maximum. The alien cadets immediately began checking their equipment. Exosuits sealed completely, becoming airtight. Anti-gravity devices hummed to life, making the cadets float slightly above the ground. Heating elements glowed bright. Day had none of this. He had his knife, the thermal organs from the spine reaver, and 4 days of determination. He started climbing. The first 1,000 meters were difficult but manageable. The slope was steep but had enough handholds and footholds. Day climbed the way his grandfather taught him, testing each grip before trusting it with his weight, moving in a steady rhythm that conserved energy. The alien cadets passed him, floating upward with their anti-gravity assists. They looked down at him with pity, some with respect, a few with continued doubt. At 1,500 meters, the temperature dropped noticeably. Day's breath came out in white clouds. His fingers started to go numb. He stopped on a small ledge and wrapped his hands in strips of fabric torn from his shirt. Not perfect insulation, but better than nothing. At 2,000 meters, breathing became harder. The air was thinner here, each breath providing less oxygen. Day slowed his pace and focused on breathing deeply and rhythmically. In through the nose, out through the mouth. His grandfather had taught him this during winter climbs in Korea. Your body can do amazing things if you do not panic, the old man had said. Pain is information. Listen to it, but do not let it control you. At 2,500 meters, the first cadet fell. A Vextar's anti-gravity device malfunctioned, and he tumbled down the mountain. Emergency protocols activated, and a rescue shuttle appeared to extract him. He was alive, but out of the course. The remaining cadets climbed more carefully after that. At 3,000 meters, Day's whole body hurt. His fingers were beyond numb. His lungs burned with each breath. Ice formed on his eyebrows and in his hair, but he kept climbing. Above him, the alien cadets in their heated suits looked comfortable. Below him, the world stretched out in shades of purple and red. He was higher than he had ever been in his life. At 3,500 meters, he saw her, a human. Another human cadet. She lay on a narrow ledge, curled into a ball, shivering violently. Her lips were blue. Her eyes were closed. Her survival pack lay nearby, broken and useless. Day recognized her vaguely from the initial briefing. Woo-soo, from the Korean delegation like him. He had not known there was another human in the course. He climbed across to her ledge. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Can you hear me?" Woo-soo's eyes opened slowly. "Cold," she whispered. "So cold." Day checked her condition. Hypothermia, advanced stage. She was dying. He should keep climbing. He was only 500 meters from the summit. He could reach it, get the beacon, and finish the course. Stopping to help her might mean both of them failing. But he was human, and humans did not leave each other to die. Day removed his outer jacket, the one he had been using for warmth, and wrapped it around Woo-soo. She was smaller than him, and the jacket covered her like a blanket. "No," she protested weakly. "You need it." "You need it more," Day replied. He gathered rocks from the ledge and built a small windbreak, blocking the worst of the wind. Then he pulled out the thermal organs from the spine reaver. They were still warm, still radiating heat. Day used his knife to shave tiny pieces of dried wood he had been carrying. He arranged the shavings in a small pile and held one of the thermal organs close. The organ's heat was intense, and after a few moments the wood shavings began to smoke. Then they caught fire. It was a tiny fire, barely bigger than his hand, but in the freezing cold of the mountain it was life itself. Woo-soo crawled closer to the flames. Color slowly returned to her face. "Your pack," Day said. "What happened?" "Sabotaged," Woo-soo replied, her voice stronger now. "Before the course. Someone broke everything except the knife. Like they wanted humans to fail." "Yeah," Day said. "Same thing happened to me." They sat in silence for a moment, warming themselves by the impossible fire. "Why help me?" Woo-soo asked. "You could win. You could be first." "First does not matter if we forget why we are here," Dee replied. "We are supposed to be building a coalition. Different species working together. How can we do that if we do not help each other? That is idealistic. Maybe. But someone has to be." They shared the second thermal organ, taking turns holding it for warmth. As dawn broke over Taro 7, the fire died out, but both of them were warm enough to continue. "Can you climb?" Dai asked. Woo-soo tested her fingers and toes. "I think so." "Then let us finish this together." They climbed the last 500 meters side by side. The wind screamed around them. The ice tried to throw them from the mountain. Every muscle in Day's body felt like it was tearing apart, but they kept climbing. At 4,000 meters, they reached the summit. The beacon sat on a flat area of rock glowing bright blue. Around it were spaces for cadets to record their completion. Day and Woo-soo were the first to arrive. They stood at the top of Summit Peak, looking down at the world below. The sun was rising, painting the landscape in gold and purple light. "We did it," Woo-soo said, her breath creating clouds in the cold air. "We did," Day agreed. Other cadets began arriving. First came the Quilnari, their anti-gravity assists glowing. Then the Chitter, including Tikcha, who saw Day and clicked a greeting. Then the Vextar, led by Rel. They all saw the two humans standing at the summit, no equipment, just determination in each other. In the orbital station, Instructor Haye Jin stood with tears in her eyes. She had watched everything. She had seen Day give away his warmth to save Wusu. She had seen him create fire in conditions where fire should be impossible. She had seen him refuse to leave another human behind. Beside her, Instructor Krelnoth was silent. His 6 eyes were all focused on the screen showing the summit. The Crucible course has been running for 30 years, the Varathian finally said. We have seen every kind of cadet. Strong ones, smart ones, brave ones, he paused. But I have never seen anything like this human. That is because you have never really understood what humans are, Hyejin said quietly. We are not the strongest. We are not the smartest. We are not the fastest or the toughest. Then what are you? We are the ones who do not quit. We are the ones who adapt. We are the ones who help each other even when it costs us everything. She looked at the screen showing Day and Wusu. We are the ones who will stand when everyone else falls. Krelnoth watched the 2 humans at the summit, surrounded by alien cadets who looked at them with new respect. Perhaps, the Varathian said slowly, we have been wrong about your species. Perhaps, Hyejin agreed. On the summit, Day sat down heavily. His body was exhausted. His hands were cut and bleeding. His clothes were torn, but he was smiling. Wusu sat beside him. What now? Now, Day said, we rest for a few minutes. Then we climb down. Then we finish this course properly. And after that? Day looked at the other cadets, at the aliens who were starting to see humans as equals rather than primitives. After that, he said, we show them that this was just the beginning. We show them what humanity can really do. The sun rose higher, warming the summit. The crucible was almost over. But for Day, Han, and Wusu, for all of humanity, the real journey was just beginning. Day 3 began with an announcement that made every cadet nervous. You are now entering the maw. Instructor Krelnoth's voice boomed from the checkpoint marker. This canyon system is home to the Spine Reaver. It is the apex predator of Taros 7. It is 4 meters tall. Its claws can cut through metal. Its hide deflects most energy weapons. Coalition doctrine requires groups of 5 with heavy plasma weapons to engage one safely. Do not engage alone. Do not separate from your groups. Move through the maw quickly and quietly. The message ended. The cadets looked at each other with fear in their eyes or antennae, or whatever organs they used for expressing emotion. Day stood at the edge of the canyon system, studying the terrain. The maw was a maze of narrow passages cut through red stone. Tall walls rose on both sides, blocking out much of the sunlight. Perfect ambush territory. The alien cadets formed tight groups. The Quilnari moved together in a formation, their plasma rifles charged and ready. The Vextar created a defensive circle, their bodies glowing bright enough to light the dark passages. Even the confident Chitter moved in pairs, their antennae constantly twitching, searching for danger. Day looked at the main path the others were taking. It was wide enough for the groups but would be slow going with everyone together. He spotted another route, a narrow ledge that ran along the canyon wall. It was barely wide enough for one person, and the drop looked deadly. Most species could not take that path. Their body structures were too large, too heavy, or too awkward. But Day was human. Humans were good climbers. His grandfather had taught him to climb in the Korean mountains when he was 6 years old. When you are small and weak, his grandfather had said, you learn to go where the big and strong cannot follow. Day started climbing. The ledge was barely the width of his foot. He pressed his body against the canyon wall and moved sideways, testing each step before putting his weight on it. Below him, the main group moved through the canyon floor. Above him, the sky was a thin line of purple. He moved slowly, carefully. One wrong step meant falling 20 meters onto sharp rocks. No equipment could save him. Only balance and focus kept him alive. Halfway across, he heard it. The sound started as a low clicking like stone hitting stone. Then it became a growl deep and rumbling. Then a roar that shook dust from the canyon walls. The Spine Reaver. Day froze on his ledge. Below, on the canyon floor, he saw 3 Quilnari cadets. They had separated from the main group, taking a shortcut. Now they were trapped in a narrow passage. The Spine Reaver emerged from a side tunnel. It was bigger than the description suggested. 4 meters of muscle and armor, with claws as long as Day's forearm. Its hide was dark gray, almost black, and looked thick as stone. 4 eyes glowed red in the shadows. It moved on 6 legs, each ending in those terrible claws. The Quilnari cadets raised their plasma rifles and fired. The energy bolts hit the creature's hide and dissipated, absorbed by the thick armor. The spine reaver did not even slow down. It charged. One cadet went down immediately, caught by a sweep of those massive claws. The other two ran, but the narrow canyon worked against them. They were trapped between stone walls with a predator behind them. Day had a choice. He could continue on his safe ledge. He could reach checkpoint Beta with time to spare. He could let the Quilnari face their fate. He thought about his grandfather's words. Being strong means standing when others cannot. I really hate those words. Day muttered. He started descending rapidly, using cracks and ledges most people would not see. His fingers found holds in the stone. His feet landed on outcroppings barely big enough for his toes. He climbed like water flows downhill, fast and natural. He hit the ground and started running, not away from the spine reaver but toward it. "Hey!" Day shouted at the top of his lungs. "Over here, you ugly piece of armor." The creature stopped chasing the Quilnari and turned. Its four eyes locked onto Day. The clicking sound increased, faster and more intense. It was reading him, analyzing him. Day ran, but he did not run away. He ran in a pattern, watching how the creature moved. It was fast but heavy. It could not turn quickly. Its 6 legs gave it stability but made it less agile. Day led it through a section of thorny bushes. The thorns caught on the creature's legs, slowing it down. He learned something. It relied on momentum. He took it through a narrow passage between 2 rocks. The creature had to slow down to fit through. He learned something else. It did not like tight spaces. He threw rocks at its face. The creature flinched away from them even though they could not hurt it. He learned something important. Despite its thermal sensors, it could be confused by sudden movements. Day was learning to hunt the hunter. He led the spine reaver to a place he had spotted during his descent. A narrow ridge above a deep pit. The creature would have to cross the ridge to reach him. Day stood at the far end of the ridge and waited. The spine reaver approached slowly now, more cautious. It sensed the trap, but could not resist the prey. Its thermal sensors told it exactly where Day was standing, exactly how warm his body was, exactly how vulnerable he looked. It charged across the ridge. At the last moment, Day dove to the side. The creature's momentum carried it forward, its massive weight working against it. It tried to stop, claws scraping stone, but it was too heavy, moving too fast. The spine reaver fell 20 meters onto sharp stalagmites below. Day looked down into the pit. The creature was not moving. He waited 5 minutes to be sure, then climbed down carefully. The spine reaver was dead. Day studied its body. Inside the creature's chest cavity, he found organs that glowed with heat. Thermal organs. They would be perfect for starting fires in wet conditions. He used his knife to carefully extract 2 of the organs. They were warm in his hands, still radiating heat even after the creature's death. "Waste not," Day said to himself, wrapping the organs in leaves. Voices called from above. The 2 Quilnari cadets he had saved appeared at the edge of the pit. A third one was with them, the injured one being supported by his companions. "You killed it," one of them said, his 4 arms hanging limp in shock. "You killed a spine reaver, alone, with a knife." "Not with the knife," Day corrected, climbing back up. "With terrain and physics. The knife was just for after." The cadet who spoke was named Vexhal. He stared at Day like seeing him for the first time. "The combat simulations say it takes 5 soldiers with plasma rifles. Coordinated fire. Heavy weapons. Simulations do not account for using the environment," Day replied. "That creature was designed to hunt in open ground. In tight spaces, its size became a weakness. Also, it hunted by heat. Your exosuits were running hot, making you easy targets. I was just body temperature." "Less interesting. You saved us," another Quilnari said. "We would be dead," Day shrugged. "Probably. But maybe not. You had plasma rifles, which did not work. They did not work because you aimed at the armor. Evolution made that armor thick for a reason. You needed to aim for the joints or the eyes or wait for it to open its mouth." Day started walking toward the canyon exit. Overwhelming firepower is great, but knowing your enemy is better. The Quilnari cadets fell in step behind him. Word of what happened spread through the remaining cadets like wildfire. By the time Day reached checkpoint Beta, everyone knew. The human had killed a spine reaver alone. Rel found Day that evening. The Vextar's crystal body pulsed with colors Day did not recognize. "I sabotaged your pack," Rel said quietly, before the course started. I believed humans were inferior, primitive, not worthy of the coalition. Day looked at him but said nothing. I was wrong, Rel continued. You have saved lives. You have done what none of us could do. You have shown strength that has nothing to do with technology. He paused. I am sorry. Day was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You finished the course so far. That means something. It means you are stronger than you think. But I tried to make you fail. Yeah, you did. And it hurt my chances. Day fed wood to his fire. But holding on to anger will not change the past. Moving forward will change the future. Rel's body shifted to a soft blue color. Among the Vextar, blue meant respect. In the orbital station, Instructor Hai Jin watched the monitors with pride. Beside her, Krelnoth's 6 eyes remained fixed on the screen showing Day's campfire. Highest survival rating in 30 years, the Varathian said quietly. And he has done it with one tool. Not one tool, Hai Jin corrected. He has his knife. But his real tools are his mind and his will to never quit. That, Krelnoth said slowly, is beginning to become clear.